Pike. This is Classical Learner Homeschooling, and we are the Unschoollables. Today we're going to talk about classical education. What is a classical education? Where could we learn more about classical education? And of course, how can we go about implementing a classical education in our homeschools? Now, in previous episodes, I covered the core 4 homeschooling methodologies that all parents should take the time to understand before we choose curriculum or anything else, because the homeschool curriculums, and there's so many great ones to choose from, all derive from these homeschooling methodologies, these philosophies. So if you understand what unschooling is, if you understand what Montessori is, if you understand what Charlotte Mason is, if you understand what a classical education is, you will be better informed and capable of choosing a curriculum that works for you, works for your family, and of course, benefits your children and their specific learning style. Because as I always say with homeschooling, you have to take the time, play around, trial and error, figure out your child's learning style. Don't fight it, embrace it. So a classical education is broken down into 3 distinct phases of learning. There is the elementary years, where children focus on grammar, the middle years, where children focus on logic, and the high school years, where children learn rhetoric. This is called the classical trivium of education of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. The grammar phase, early childhood, focuses on memorization. Now, you would say that's antithetical to what we usually talk about on this channel, where I always say that early childhood education should focus on a so-called master's degree in the process of learning and critical thinking. But with the classical education, the entire education is designed, it's structured to prompt critical thinking. So allow me to get into it in a little bit further detail. So the grammar phase focuses on memorization and specifically teaching children the habit of defining words, that words have definitions, that you have to take the time, look up the definition of the word, because if you understand the definition of the word, you'll better understand the arguments being made later on in the logic phase and in the rhetoric phase. Why is this important? Let's use politics as an example, which I don't love because, quite frankly, I think it's a giant swamp that we should all avoid, but we're all familiar with these type of arguments. So you have the one politician on the left wing saying, I stand for equality. And then you have the other politician on the right wing saying, I homeschool. That's my son. Okay, sorry about the delay. I had to assist my son with that matter. So you have the one politician on the left wing who says, I stand for equality. And you have the other politician on the right wing who says, I stand for equality. And to an untrained mind, they might not understand that these two politicians are talking about a completely different thing because they're operating under a different definition of equality. This is why it's so important from an early age we teach our children the importance of forcing people you're having a debate with, or when you're reading and you come across a word that you don't understand, it's very important that you get a proper definition of a word, because that left-wing politician is referring to equality of outcome, saying that everyone should have the same amount of money and the same housing, and the right-wing politician is referring to equality of opportunity, that everyone should have the same rights under the law. Completely different arguments that can be indistinguishable from one another to an untrained mind. So in the grammar phase, children are taught the importance of defining words so that they can later better comprehend arguments being made in the logic and the rhetoric phase. The logic is just what it sounds like. It's what 95% of the public lacks when you go into Facebook and you see people having an argument. But it's if A, then B, then C, basic logic. A book that I love for young children is The Fallacy Detective, which teaches children the different types of logical fallacies so that they can identify straw man arguments and red herrings and the type of manipulative arguments we see from the previously mentioned political class. And the third phase of a classical education is rhetoric, which is the art form of transferring your knowledge to other people by connecting with emotions. The political class is really a great example for this because everything they do is rhetoric. Take someone like Barack Obama. When he talks about a right-wing politician, he'll usually say something along the lines of, "How hard is it to say you are against white supremacy?" Now, that politician might not be for white supremacy, right? But he's implying it with a question. This is rhetoric, and it's how you sway people to accepting your position without making a logical argument. This is something the political class is very astute at. A right-wing example would be every politician that ran against Trump, right? Right-wing politician runs on border security. Well, Trump came out and he ran on building a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. Well, this is the type of rhetoric that connects with people emotionally. They can see the wall. The wall is a symbol of security, right? So these are just forms of rhetoric. By the way, I'm not saying anything bad about Obama. I'm not saying anything bad about Trump. Obviously, I have my thoughts on these people, but these are concrete examples of what grammar, logic, and rhetoric are, and this is the type of education children who receive a classical education receive. Now, if you're interested in doing more reading, there are books, The Lost Tools of Learning by Dorothy Sayers. It's about 35 pages. You could read it in one night and you will have a much better understanding of what a classical education is. And A Well-Trained Mind, which is actually written by a homeschool parent who implemented classical education in their homeschool. They wrote a whole book about it, and the book not only covers their experience, but how to go about implementing a classical education within your homeschool. And if you are interested in a formal curriculum, one that I love is Classical Conversations. They use a classical education, the classical Trivium, but Classical Conversations is a more formal type of homeschool curriculum. They have a schedule that's set, so Monday through Friday, this is what you do at 8 a.m., this is what you do at 9 a.m., this is what you do at 10 a.m. Not my favorite style of education, but if that's what you're looking for, it's a great option. And they actually have weekly meetups, so you and your children meet up with other families in the area who also use Classical Conversations once a week, and there's a class taught by a formal teacher, so the children get formal education, they get experience in a classroom interacting with same-age peers or maybe children that are a few years apart from them. But overall, it's a very good program, very good experience. Let me know what you think about a classical education. Let me know if you have any questions or any topics you would like me to cover in future videos. Freedom isn't free. We have to earn it every day, and I will be back tomorrow to earn it.